Hey, let's look at the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers. Did you know there was a book called Numbers in the Bible? It's the fourth book of the Old Testament, fourth book of the Bible, the book of Numbers. And Numbers continues to go along with Moses and the Israelites as they have been delivered out of Egypt in the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible. And then in the third book, the last one we looked at, Leviticus, God has continued giving not only the Ten Commandments, but now, or then in Leviticus, more instructions about the tabernacle and about the priests and his own holiness and all that. So we looked at that last time. And now the book of Numbers. Numbers really has the Israelites wandering in the wilderness on the way to the promised land, but taking a whole lot longer to get there, decades in fact, than would have been necessary. They could have gotten there quickly, but because of their own disobedience and their own lack of faith, they were unable to get there. And so there are some key themes in the book of Numbers. Now I'm wearing this Auburn shirt. I like numbers like 48 to 45. If you're an Alabama fan, you'll know what that means. I went to the Auburn, Florida game, did not care for the numbers on the scoreboard at the end of that game. And we even have some Georgia folks out there who like the numbers 21 to 14. I know that. I didn't care for that. But hopefully we'll get to do all that again this fall. We'll see, right? Okay, the book of Numbers. Some key themes there that are going on. One huge thing is the sovereignty of God. The sovereignty of God. God is doing his thing. God has this particular God, Yahweh, the personal covenant-keeping God of the Holy Scriptures, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, and those his descendants are who we're talking about, the Israelites. This God is a particular personal God, not just any old philosophical concept of a supreme being, but he's a particular God, and we get to know him. And he is sovereign. He created everything, and he exists outside of the universe, and yet he is within the universe too, because he chooses to be and because he loves us, as we talked about last time. This God makes plans and pursues those plans. And right now he's in the unfolding dynamic of a salvation plan that began with Abraham and is continuing through Moses and the Israelites. And folks can get in on being a part of his plan or not. And he allows freedom of choice, of course, but he's not going to let anything derail his plan. And so people can be a part of it, or he can do it through them, or he can do it without them. You know, it's kind of up to them, kind of up to us. So the sovereignty of God, the presence of God, continues to be a major theme. Just like in Exodus and in Leviticus, with the whole emphasis on the tabernacle, the presence of God. Transcendent, yes, but also immanent, with us, as near as our next breath, within us in Jesus Christ. So the presence of God and the purity and holiness of God continue to be a major theme, being brought forth from the two preceding books we've talked about. God and his revelation, and the fact that God is revealing himself and true information that's important about himself, about us, about the world, about salvation, those kinds of things. He puts forth direction for his people, and he expresses his revelation in a variety of ways. He'll use Moses. In fact, the phrase, the Lord spoke to Moses, and then it'll tell us what he said, occurs many times in the book of Numbers. He also uses unwilling agents like Balaam, a sorcerer who really wasn't all that interested in the things of God, and even a donkey God uses in the book of Numbers to speak to his people, to proclaim truth. So God and his revelation to people, letting people know about himself, conveying truth to people, is a major theme. Also the idea of promise and fulfillment. Promise and fulfillment is already underway. We sometimes think of the Old Testament as all promise, The New Testament is all fulfillment. And, there is some truth to that, but it isn't completely that way. I mean, already in this fourth book of the Old Testament, we see fulfillment already happening. Promise, yes, and fulfillment already happening. Things happening according to how they were promised by God. We see here, and I've mentioned this a little bit, but the uniqueness and exclusivity of God. Sometimes it'll say, I am a jealous God. And he doesn't mean that in a negative way, just that he's unique and he's exclusive. He's real, he's personal, he's a one of a kind, and he wants our devotion. He's jealous for that. And he wants us to be committed to him, to the God of the Bible, as he has revealed himself to be. Finally, there is a key theme of celebrating in worship in the book of Numbers. You work through the book of Numbers and you see things like there are songs of worship in the book of Numbers. One's called the Song of the Cloud. One is called the Battle Song of the Ark. There is a variety of kinds of worship. Worship is really a theme already. In a book like Numbers, we tend to think of Numbers as this dry, dusty Israelites just wandering around in the desert, reaping what they've sown for their lack of faith and obedience. And that is there. There is a lot of that. But there are these other themes as well. So I just leave that with you right quick on the book of Numbers. And I wonder what of those themes might be particularly pertinent for you today. God's sovereignty, God's presence, his holiness and purity, his revelation, that he reveals things. And we're kind of responsible for what he reveals. We're responsible for what we know, aren't we? And he wants us to want to know more of his revelation. Promise and fulfillment. Does that strike a chord with you? God's promise and God's fulfillment of his promises. Hang in there. Hang in there. God fulfills his promises. God is faithful. God is faithful. The uniqueness and exclusivity of God, and finally, celebration in worship. Amen. Amen. God bless you.